Welcome back to Potatoes, to episode 15 of Empyrean Galactic Survival Multiplayer on Grandpa's Gaming, the Lost City of Soul server. As we left off the last episode, we were just arriving here at Bolshi Orbit. As you can see, I have mapped the ring around Bolshi proper, with all the asteroids that are there, and behind us is the Bolshi moon, where I will be setting up our land base. Before we do that, however, we're going to spawn the crown jewel. I believe this is the perfect location for it. We have in sight of both planets, have access to both, as well as the ring in the galaxy. It's been a fairly quiet zone. There's only been 2 drones, which are now gone. But I am not concerned about anything. As we move forward from here, we first should take a look back at what it took to create this. It is a Class 132 base. Has the additions that we have on the server. So there are spotlights, additional solar, multiple repair bays. You will see it soon, but here's how it was created. So here is the original corpse. This has not been worked on in something over a year. Decided to update it a bit, so I brought it into a creative game and have been working on that. However, it really turned out to be a lot more work than I anticipated rather. I have completely redone it, and you will see that shortly. At this point, I'm just going to give a brief run through of as it was before we go into the expansions. The upper deck is very similar still, though the tower is getting taller because this is basically twice as high in the new version. But as you can see, the towers here are just, the access ways are just concrete and go down into an access way. This will become a greenhouse, and the corner towers will be removed. That is in process still, so I can't tell you how the final verdict is. The center area as well, this has also been stripped away. However, the main greenhouse underneath is still there, but still needs work at this point. And the weapons have also been removed, but I have added some additional things as well. This is just a vanilla picture of as it was to start, and from here we will go from there. As you can see, there are lots of lights in it. As we open the control panel, in fact, we will take a look at the statistics. You can see there are a total of 860 lights on this base, which really hurts frame rate. Currently there's nothing in here except for the base. There's no vessels, etc. And my frame rate is only running in the 20s with the lights on. When I turn the lights off, it does jump up to anywhere between 50 and 60, so they really have a very substantial impact. Also, the concrete floor is still solid. That is being reworked as well. That will be nice windows. The entire wall and floor and ceiling will be windowed off, so it will be visible from the outside. That is how it stands currently. That's where it is now, and we will go for an additional strip with progress of what I have done thus far. And here we are to the next step in the progression. As you can see, I have knocked out all the ceilings and the walls because the dimensions are changing a bit. The original ceiling was at the altitude of these towers here. That is the original box that was on the top. However, the lighting is now changed, as has the tower. Are now using the truss blocks, a little fancier. And underneath we do have bottom or additional greenhouses. There are 4 in the 4 corners now, which I think I had mentioned previously. Each of the corners has an additional 66. 68. Had to think about a minute. Was there 68 in each of the 4 plus the original 468? I believe I will be placing 4 more. The original towers were actually out roughly around here because I did thin it out by 20 blocks width. However, it is longer by an additional 80 blocks. So the current dimensions are approximately 200 by 100, whereas previously it was roughly 120 by 120. So I will continue with that. Let's see, underneath, I had mentioned in the previous clip for the original model as well. Underneath here, there are now a total of 9 furnaces. There's 2 in each of the fingers that come out. A little light, as well as a couple more constructors. There's a total of 16 on the base now. There's 1 in each of these, and 2 in the ends of these fingers, as well as some additional cargo boxes. As you can see off to the sides, I've been starting to add some cargo underneath as well, because all the original cargo boxes were in the original ceiling. So I am placing them a bit more strategically underneath. This is still concrete and standard glass to try to help keep it economical, even though it is such a massively large base. So I am not going to be using combat steel or armored concrete, armored glass, because that will simply be too expensive, because it is a space base after all, not really designed for a battle base, to speak. It's more about the functionality of it. So we will continue forward from here. These 2 areas, you can see it's actually not lit up, but both the original cemetery and the crypt fit inside at the same time. Each of these will be separate switches, so they will not go against the overall oxygen for the base unless they are actively turned on. I'll be setting up a 3rd one for the 2 side regions, which will go together. These will be combined and expanded a bit on the sides, likely out to here or so, possibly 1 more, because we will be also parking a graveyard. Will be able to fit on the side, and there will still be space on the other side as well for a small to medium side capital vessel, whereas these larger ones, this guy here he's 27, this one right there, so that's a fairly sizable base, or CV rather, whereas the cemetery I believe is only 12 or 13. I have to take a look. Let's see. It was 12, but I think I upped it to, still 12, yeah. I think it became 13 when I upgraded some of the weaponry, but that will remain as it is, whereas the OP version does have quite a few additional weapons, as you can see, added to it from its original model. So we'll go from here, and the blue strips are basically the overall size of it, but it needs to be filled in with the windows and all that, so I will work on that, get the additional 4 towers for the greenhouses, finish additional cargo and the glass, and I'll bring you back in before we start the walls. Here we are for our next clip. It's roughly a day later. As you can see, I have continued to knock things apart. Actually, I'm still shrinking down. It's only a class 29 right now, and there's still more holes to put in the floor before I start building things up. But we can see I've found the locations for the towers, which is, I think, as we left the last clip off. I haven't built them yet, but I wanted to make sure I had spaces for them to fit, knowing how big they would be. As you can see, though, all of the walls are all open. this will all be floors on the top here, so that these will be solid by the time it's done. But the walls all the way around will be open. There will be a floor up here for more land and some living quarters, and the ends are entirely open as well to allow as big access to as large vessels as possible. Specifically, they're modeled to the ones that I have crafted, of course. So we'll see what they'll end up doing with the other side, maybe when I make another capital or something along those lines, who knows. But that's the basics of the layout as it stands right now, and we'll continue forward. I am just starting to work on the towers now, but realize that a lot of other things had changed since then, so we will continue with this as things proceed forward, and we'll add more and return. And here we just see the completed frame with all the holes cut in the floor. Glass still needs to be added. As we take a look in the blueprint list here, you can see it is actually class 27, the rough size 107, 184. That will grow, certainly. I know there will be some decks, walkways, things like that around. I will be doing decorations, of course. But it occurs to me that this was originally created with cost in mind, so it was just straight concrete. Right now I've got it stripped down as much as it's going to be, so I think I am going to upgrade it to the armored concrete as well as armored glass. Still only be one layer, but it will be the better material, because even just landing the big ships takes damage on the concrete, and there's only one layer between they and the cargo boxes that will be under these areas here that are opaque. So let's do another production update. As you can see right off from a distance here, we have completed the other 4 towers for a total of 8. However, in doing so, as I was working on other things, I have decided that I can fit 10. I can fit one over here on the side for the crypt, which, by the way, is now entirely enclosed. Still needs glass, just as before. You can see the lower level. In fact, I've been painting and the like before I put the glass in, but that is nearly ready to go. Just a little painting now that the texturing is done, but I've succeeded in closing this section off. It will be completely open out the sides, as they are only force fields, so to be able to take the ships out and take off directly as if it was on an external bay, even though it will be enclosed. The side bays also should now be entirely airtight, as will the center bay and the other side as well. Again, once the glass is done, I need to do the upper glass as well. And after that, we will of course need to enclose the side for the cemetery. This is a slightly different shape vessel, so I'll need to do some tinkering to see what can work. Then, after that, I'll work on something more up top. Living quarters and the like will be up here with the con tower and the like, but that's several clips off to the future. Just wanted to bring you in as an update. Let's see, underneath, have been working on texturing as well down below. You can see that these are the lights that we will have. The light, or the white rather, is the sections I have not completed yet, but you can see that these are pretty glowy, so they stand out even at a distance. But each of these underneath is in fact a 68 growing plot, along with some refrigerators in each one. Should actually turn on the marker lights. so they all will be lit, and of course there will be 2 additional towers on the next update as well. And we have proceeded forward further. At this point, we have now glassed in the entire floor, as well as the ceiling in the other end. Figures. But as the ceiling in the crypt thing. So when we go inside here, if we turn the oxygen on, actually before we even do that, as you can see in the lower left there, the oxygen is grayed out. But if we go in here and say large center and turn that on, you see it took a bunch of oxygen down, and now we have atmosphere in here. So this is fully enclosed. I will continue to do so. The next step will be to glass in the top, because I believe both of the sides are done. That'll be the next step. But underneath we have turned off the marker lights, turn those back on, but kind of dress this up a bit more, use a couple more tanks. So these are all done. All 10 of them are identical. So there's now a total in this blueprint of 1,148 glowing plots, so quite a bit. And it has grown up to 55. The last clip it was actually at 47, so it grew a bit more with the additional towers as expected. So we'll go from this point forward and then start working on closing in the other end, because I believe that will be the only other area that I need to figure out, and then start filling up the interior. And as work continues, as you can see, I have completed enclosing the cemetery. It still needs the glass on the top, of course, but that along with 2 additional towers, which I will do to bring it up to a total of 12 towers. I figured there are 12 growable plots, so I'll have 1 tower for each crop option. That way things can be backed up still in the main central greenhouse, as it were. So I will continue to close that in and build those towers and close the glass. The other thing that has occurred to me as I've been working on all of this is that if I do not have the side hangars oxygenated, then it will be a walk in climate, at least to temperature, because it's still inside. However, there will not be oxygen. So I think what I will do is create some sort of a walkway between them that connects to the central out through here, or perhaps out here. I'm not sure quite yet the best route to go. Originally I was planning on putting cargo boxes underneath all of this, but we may not need the room, because as we look right now, even without adding the cargo boxes underneath, we are at 424. There's going to be another 80 coming with the 2 additional towers, so that'll be what, 504. That's even without them underneath, so it'll be plenty of storage on the base. That's not going to be an issue. So I will run the airways and the walkways underneath first, and from there then we will branch out and fill the rest of the area with whatever needs to be done for gravity and additional cargo. So it's time for another update. We have finished with all the glass, as you can see, and finished the towers. You'll see there are 7 on each side. I'm not sure what I was thinking in the last clip. As I had stated, there were 12 different crops. In fact, there are 14. I must likely thinking of 12 refrigerated crops, because the fiber and the coffee, of course, are not done. But as you can see, I have added solar panels underneath. This is at the cemetery side of the base, which is the side away from you as you spawn it. So long as you are basically facing the sun when you spawn it, the solar panels will be aligned. But as you can see underneath, actually, I've spiced these up. I think I had shown this before. Still need a little bit of tinkering just to get that settled in the way I would like it. Let's see what else. I'm not sure if I displayed this, but I have removed all of the wall, or all the posts rather. So all the walls are now open to the major hangar bays. Now it is just internal supports, as you can see, and I have begun to work on the central tower as well. Actually, you should have the lights on. I had to disable all the logic. In renaming them, I will recreate the logic, because I added them at either end, and they're now letters instead of numbers, so I'm going to redo that. But as we go up, as you can see, I've been working on building this tower with structures, or supports as it were. It's about as tall as it will get, but up here I will put the living quarters and the like, as well as the major medical facility, though I will put the basic core necessities down here around the tower when you're first arriving. I'm thinking it's not terribly likely to be that frantically important in a space base, because you will be traveling here on your own vehicles anyway, unless you're in a small vessel or something like that, but that's even there, just local travel, so that shouldn't be a problem. With that said, though, I am going to create an additional one around the center here. Not quite sure how as yet, with all the glass flooring, which is from the original corpse base, of course. This was not allocated with the same 2x2 pattern that I used on the rest of the base, as I was doing the central greenhouse on this, as it was the first base I created. Nonetheless, that's more or less the status of where we're at right now. It is currently class 87, I want to say, off the top of my head. Let's take a look here. And actually it's reached 88 now, so yes, it's increasing in size continually. By the time I'm done with this other stuff, it is going to be close to class 100. I'm not sure if it's going to breach it or not, but we'll see how it goes. At any rate, that's where we are here, and we'll proceed forward, and I'll bring you back in when I make more headway. So for today's update, we have done quite a bit on the base. To start off with, you'll see an obvious thing in front of you here, sitting on the crypt actually, which of course is just parked here, but you will notice there are solar panels on it. That is because we have been doing some updates on the server that I will be using this base on, in that we have allowed a number of additional blocks and crossovers. Additional repair bays. As you can see, there are multiples as well. Get smart and turn the lights on. One of these days I'll learn to do that early enough. Let's see. I'm just going to slam them all on because I still have not gotten to the logic, but you can see there are multiples of the repair bays, which only one of which are normally allowable. We can now place spotlights on the base, which are usually only allowable on vessels. That I had not gotten to yet on the base, but also we expanded the solar capabilities, so we can now have one panel. I believe I had left off with the solar panel being quote-unquote complete. Well, now it's actually complete. There are 100 panels, and I have 50 capacitors built in. It is kind of chose a blue color, kind of offset it as it were, and it has expanded quite a bit. I've got all the supports and the lights and the marker lights, that is, set up for it. So the base actually now we have balanced. We've also, I say we, primarily because Gamer Keller and I have been horsing around with this on our server. He came up with a lot of the ideas and the routines on how to do it, and has taught me, so I have been assisting him in adjusting the rates a bit. But as you can see, they're all still pointing the sun as before. But if we take a look at the control panel here, you can see that the battery is fully charged. Let's see, what else have we done? We have also proceeded forward, and we are now working on the tower since the solar is done. As you can see, I've got 3 levels of this set up. Still have to continue dressing it up, but wanted to just display the tower, as it were, as it's evolving. Have an array of weaponry on top here as well, and I will still continue placing additional weapons out near the outer edges. Originally I was considering placing them on separate pods, but to be quite honest, the base is so large that really it has kind of reached the limits. We'll just go quickly into the factory here. See, Crypt Starbase. But as you can see, it's currently 206 blocks long. It's a little out of center from the core, but the side on the crypt is actually 1 block from the outer edge, so it cannot expand that direction any longer. As a result, I will in fact just place the additional turrets and such on the 4 corners and leave it at that. Will have to suffice, which is just fine. But we have added on the top floor some additional growth plots. Guess I don't have lights up here yet either, but excuse me. So there's an additional 30 up here. I used wood on the top. Excuse me, 120. 4 areas of 30 for additional. This will be pretty much the main construction or main chef area. I'll set this up with some tables and the like on this floor. The next floor down will be the lounge area, perhaps a couple of beds, things like that. I'm not going to go too psycho with niceties because the base is getting so large. It's actually class 100, which is the other reason it's kind of a landmark for me, but I've now reached a class 100 base, and it is still growing, so it'll be several class levels higher, I'm sure, by the time I'm done with the additional weaponry, but this will be the living areas. And then on the first floor is becoming the medical area. I'll set it up with some niceties and such decorations, but it's got the functional stuff in it right now for all the core stuff. So that is what is there. The other thing I have actually added but not configured is on each tower, as I mentioned. There's 1 tower for each crop basically, but I will have LCD panels listed as to what is in each tower, and likewise on these. We'll start with a medium, but I may need to switch it to a full-size panel, but I figured I would put first level medical bay, second level lounge, and like that, and what is actually in the tower, as I will be doing on the LCDs on the others. That's kind of where we're at now, and just kind of still spreading stuff about with some of the new expansion capabilities that we've allowed. I'll bring in once we get the spotlights in place and the tower complete, and see if there's anything left after that. oh yeah, the weapons. So there's basically three major topics that need to be done. And then perhaps finalize some texturing, so this is not just plain on top, but I've been working on the majority of it. Oh, right, I almost forgot. But also down below, I have completed the walkways in between all the towers. It's basically mirrored on both sides, but coming out of the main greenhouse. And of course, this is all aerated, but it's all windowed walkways, so we'll be able to walk along here. Looks like the repair lights are pretty obnoxious when they're on, aren't they? So let's turn those off, get rid of that crazy purple glow. Let's see, armor repairs off. Okay, there we go. And some lighting enough, but I didn't want to have it too bright in here so you can see out at the stars and such as you're walking. But this goes down in both directions in very similar fashion into one, and then it basically creates a chain between all of the lower greenhouses underneath the towers. So here we are, a couple days later, real time actually, but I have made headway as mentioned in the previous clip. Among other things, we now have the spotlights installed. You can see it lights up the lower deck quite well. Okay. But we have lots of light down in the lower deck, in the internal, as well as the central tower. And I also added some around the surrounding tower, just to do the kind of the upper deck in that area. But as you can see, the upper tower is in fact complete at this point. The first level, as we had left off, is indeed the medical bay, which is now textured and the like. Has, I think, everything. I don't believe I missed anything. If I did, that's will be remedied by the time it is published, of course. But then above this, we do have the lounge area, which is actually where I started, out on the walkway outside. And up on top is indeed, this is set up now. Have a few eating tables and the like. Figured this could be the eating area as well. Plus the texturing and colors and the like. And likewise up some additional texturing done up here. Another thing I have done is we have now completed the cargo bay blocks. As we shrink down below, you will see that there are running along the base of the belly in these solid areas as intended. These are all now filled with cargo blocks. Little over 1,300 on the base now, I think, is the total. We'll actually take a look at that if I hit the right key. Let's see. And in statistics, yeah, we're at 1,315 cargo boxes, so I will be placing some of those, as you can see in the blocks over on the left here. I'm going to set some groups up to offer visitors, as this is designed as a multiplayer base, of course. And also have adjusted some of the fuel tanks and oxygen tanks, etc. So the base will now hold twice the capacity it takes to fill. Have done some additional texturing on the upper deck here. It's a little more reflective than the other, but more decorative as well. And I will do that on the lower deck also. I think that will help to tone it down a little bit. You can see how bright in color it is with the spotlights on. However, up here, where they are about the same distance away, they're not quite as bright. So this is a darker texture, so I will continue to use that. Further on, I believe the next, really about all that is left as far as actually building the base is concerned, is to work out the gravity. There are some dead spots still. If we go out in the center here, you can see we're right here. We have no gravity, but we're actually quite close. It's only a few blocks, so I'll put one or two down the center underneath the cargo bay. That way it will be low enough under the deck that it will not create radiation issues. Now, I did run into a snag in all this, however. Go up here as an example, but as we take a look at the angle blocks here, some of these, I'm looking, see now, and even here it happened again. Oh, there we go, there's the example I had done. But if we take a look at this, you can see that this one truss block is solid, but the majority of them are not. So something got corrupted. It's kind of obnoxious because there are several thousand of these truss blocks on here. I have found that it happened both with the slope blocks as well as the curved slope. So we go in here, you can see straight down. There are no cross members on the sides of these blocks either. Again, it's just basically just weapons texturing. And then work on the control panel, cleaning it up to set it up as I do, and to fix up the digital logic so the lights are once again automated. Again, there are pockets in each area that I can place them in. I was just doing that last, so I kind of have a running list of what I need to configure so I can get the signal logic organized fairly well. Oh yeah, I added quite a few more marker lights around the outside on the upper and mid levels. I have not done the lowest level as yet because I will be adding the weapons down to the corners, and I will put the markers on after that. And that's pretty much where we're at now. A much brighter base, a little easier to see what's going on when you're building and things on the inside of it. But I'm getting close, getting very close. It's been nearly 3 weeks since the actual beginning right now, so by the time these things are in fact done, it likely will be about a month or so of creation on this base. Well, at this point, we're getting closer and closer. I have now completed the weapons arrays. You can see the 4 corners now have those complete. Added quite a few of the smaller little bitty turrets, the sentry guns. You can see each of the little red points all across the base contain one, both above and below. I have completed the gravity updates as well. You can see these underneath, some of which are gravity, plus some additional oxygen tanks did finish the balance there, along with some niceties as well. As usual, have the lights off like a dodo. Turn all that stuff on now. Usually I have those off, as well as the gravity actually. Trying to let the battery charge up. Still experimenting with the balance a little bit, but I think it's pretty good, as it does still lose when things are on and gain when they are off. But I have completed the textures throughout the floor, which I think I was partway through in the last clip, if not mistaken, as well as texturing much of what is underneath as well. So the texturing is just about done. The 2 remaining major tasks to be done will be the motion sensors for the internal lights that I have not done, as well as resolving the truss block issue. And then of course the control panel, which I suppose is 3 major tasks, but that really is about all that's left for the base. Just kind of flying around aimlessly at this point, just sort of highlighting both above and below of what has been growing on the base. Have done railings around all of the decks. They are completely enrailed, with 4 minor exceptions being right in here where the 3 force field walls come together. There just was no way to get it on either on the inside or the outside. So that's going to have to be that way, unfortunately, but that's life. Did add a few additional things around the base here, around the bottom of the tower rather, because in just experimenting and testing, going up the elevator to what is now the medical bay, which is also now listed on the LCD panels. As you can see, there are actually 7 floors on the base, but I have those noted in the central tower. And as we go up, you can see the medical room is fairly... Is this medical? No, further up. See, like I'm saying, it takes a while to go up at the standard speed. But once we do get in the tower, you see I've added a few bells and whistles, some of the moving trusses, or what do you call these things? The decoration blocks around on each floor. A few more things in here in the lounge. And then more in the diner floor, including a number of additional refrigerators. Gotta have fridges in a diner, of course, plus just some other niceties in general, a couple of refrigerators, things of that nature, though those are decoration refrigerators, granted. But even outside here, I've done a bit more additional texturing and the like on this level. So it is getting very close. Next step will be the digital logic as far as the tower lights are concerned, and motion sensors, as well as some control panel work, and then I'll deal with the truss blocks. Well, after no further ado, here we are with the final base. It is now April 21st, so it's about 3.5 weeks, roughly. It's actually Saturday right now, and I believe the 27th when I started was a Tuesday, I think, off the top of my head. I could be wrong on that. You'll have to check if you're really curious. But we have completed all of the motion sensors. Kind of hidden a little bit by the spotlights right now, as I do have all the lights on, but as we get close to each of the towers, as you can see, the lights go on and likewise off as we back away. This will help for those who have slightly less powerful systems, because all of the other lights are on switches as well. Have them for the marker lights, which are the red extremities of the base, and the hangar and landing pad for the inside and outside on the floors. Of course, the spotlights and repairs also has some lights. You can see the pink going on and off as I turn the repairs on and off. And also, as we go a little further into the control panel, that is now completely done. As you can see, there are multiple cargo groups, more so than I have had on any other bases. Things like the resources are itemized out into the components and the raws on down the line, and I've done that with many of the other greater cargo groups as well. And down the line, even things like food processors have allocated out, so there will be one or more for each of the grown food types, since the refrigerators do not use power but keep things refrigerated. Lights are all broken up, etc., and I've cleaned those up so they're in rough order. Further down the line, a few groups for the different ventilators, and the weapons as well are separated out into different groups just to make them slightly easier if you wish to assign them to attack different types of targets, whether that be the drones or the weapons on a possible freighter going by, things of that nature. So, with all that done, the last thing that I had mentioned in the previous clip here was fixing all of the truss blocks. Unfortunately, the replace blocks command, there is no way to do that. I would like to thank specifically 3 users who did actually respond in the forums to have some input and further testing, specifically Aztic, to Siege Incorporated, and to Razor Wire. And between the 3 of them, they did do some additional tests on their own. It appears that my syntax on the command format were correct. However, the catch is that you can only use them on things like the cubic blocks. So I did use them in some cases, concrete to armored concrete, for example, because there were a number on the floors of the base that I did miss. I knew that would likely be the case, so I used that to replace those. However, on the truss blocks, I could change these truss slope blocks, for example, to alien cubes, which is a block I had not used. However, when I try to turn them back, they do not reappear as the truss slopes. The only option was to do a truss cube. So that did require a bit of manual replacement, which I have done. At first I was considering not doing it until the end, but decided after 3.5 weeks, another day of manual replacement, now is not the time to cut corners on the very final step of the build. So they are all now rendering properly in the blueprint, and they are saved as such, so they should work as intended. I believe that is just about it for the base itself. I'll bring you in just a moment. And here is the base with my 3 primary capital vessels. My starter, the graveyard, fits in the small, actually this is the larger of the 2 side bays. The mid-range, the cemetery, which is an external carrier battle cruiser. As you can see, fits fairly nicely over on the smaller of the central sides, but that also is entirely enclosed within the climate controls. And then my master endgame ship, the Crypt. This one is the Crypt Tier 3 model with the additional weaponry as well as the solar and the furnaces and the like. As you can see, that fits nicely inside the larger of the central bays. Now these are on separate switches. As we come inside the bay right now, as you can see down in the lower left here, there is no oxygen. However, in the upper right, which is up here when I get rid of the thing, it's that is listed as climate controlled. Now if I go in, for example, and turn on the large center, doing that, you will notice the oxygen will in fact light up in the lower left hand corner there. So that is, they are separate divisions. The thought of this is simply, I have saved the blueprint with all of the bays turned off, so it will only require the amount of oxygen to fill the central towers, which of course all contain greenhouses underneath, 1 plant for each, which I have saved the blueprint as well in fully grown state. However, I realize that the truth of the matter is most of them will likely die when they are spawned, but had to do it just for a matter of show. But as you can see as well underneath here, as usual, I don't have all the lights on, but some of these on, there are walkways in between them all, and that is simply so you can walk in between the towers even if this is not in the oxygen, if the ventilators are turned off. So that is the end of the build. Oh yeah, the other the small side here, this I intend to create another a very small capital vessel as well. I do have a return trip set up now, which is basically just a standard steel build to get us through the one-way portals with a relatively disposable capital, but I will build another smaller one here, designed more as a fighter craft, very agile, more like a small vessel capability to move around, but that's looking off a ways in the future because I do have a few other things on my plate to create. That is the baby, so the next thing you will see is me spawning this on the server. So now we shall step out of our captain's chair and run past our crew out to the front deck. And I believe we stand in this angle block. We're still nice and safe from the non-atmosphere space conditions. I'm not sure if I will take ailments or not at this temperature with my armor, but should be able to spawn the drone here. We'll line up perfectly with the sun. And hit the spawn button, pop the drone, or not pop the drone, that's okay. We know it's heading in the right direction, so we'll just place it because it's already green. Still waiting for the ghost image to finish rendering. And down it goes. It is now in the game. Meanwhile, I'll banshee towards it as quickly as I can possibly fly. Probably should have taken a small vessel because it's further away than I had thought. It should power up with the solar that is on it. But I will attempt to save some crops if possible. I have as much oxygen as I can carry in my backpack. Get close enough to open the menu. Here we go. Main, fill all. Fill all. Oxygen on. These guys off. Okay. Ooh. I didn't even have enough. There we go. Okay. So now the main compartments have oxygen and it's powered up. Which is good because I was getting heat stroke, so now I am in a environmentally safe condition. Go ahead and run right towards the shower to take care of the heat stroke. Yes, adverse conditions in the space zone, which is why a shower, which is why an enclosed base is so beneficial. I'm not sure what I'm going to be getting into as we look down and see, and it looks like most of the crops actually survived. That's a wonderful thing. Very good. And we won't have oxygen in these outer sections. Even here we don't. But we do have gravity, so as we go down, let's see, this one is going to be the pearling fruit. Among the least important, but they are alive. Beautiful. Well, I'm a happy camper. So this is going to be a much easier setup than I had anticipated, because there are some crops that we had not located as yet, namely the alien honey or the textured fiber. But as you can see, here's 68 of them. Quite the farm of a base. Run down and take a look at the far end of the base underneath. through several layers of crops. All of these lights are as well controlled by motion sensors, so they should be fairly economical as far as power is concerned, as well as better for frame rates. Beautiful. Clearly visible through the red background. I was hoping for that effect. And finally up into the A's. See the solar from underneath. All the spotlights lit, so we'll bring the crypto board and get it settled in. Finish replanting its crops. Well, I don't know. What I do know is that I'm okay. It's the world that's all wrong. It's just a matter of perspective. I thank you very much for watching, and take care.